Hey everyone, and welcome to the Courage 365 show. I'm your host, Ashley Easter, and I am so excited because we have a great guest who's going to be on the show today. Her name is Mary Hyatt. Yes, that Mary Hyatt. You may know her father, Michael Hyatt. He does a lot of marketing things, but I've got to be honest, this is my favorite Hyatt. So I think you're really going to enjoy having Mary on the show today. We tune in to talk with special guests about abuse and healing and trauma and healing every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So I would encourage you, if you are listening for the first time right now, to go ahead and like the Courage 365 page, whether you are watching on Facebook or Twitter or subscribing to the Courage 365 YouTube channel. And go ahead and hit share on this so your friends can also watch the live video. We would love for you to do that. So without further ado, I would like to invite Mary Hyatt onto the show.
Hey girl, how's it going?
It is so good. I'm just really stoked to have you here. I think we were talking before the show, like in 2017 at the Hot Healthy Habits Retreat.
Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that event because that's where I learned about intuitive eating for the first time. But, just getting to know you, it was just so awesome.
Yeah, it was like, that was just a powerhouse women coming together, like being encouraged to love their bodies, to love their shape, to trust their bodies. It was such a great event.
Yes, it really, really was. And I need to connect with some of the other ladies there because it was awesome, and I haven't chat with them in a while. But anyway, before we get too much further into the show, I'd love to just read your bio really quick, and then I'll let you do a little bit more of a personal introduction. But just so we get all the technical stuff and everybody knows what you do. Cool. So I'm going to read that right here. Mary Hyatt is a life and business mindset coach who specializes in helping high-achieving female entrepreneurs move from living a life of burnout to a life where they are connected to their emotions, their body, and their spirit. She helps bring her one-on-one coaching clients back to their enoughness, wholeness, and femininity. Mary is the host of the Living Fully Alive podcast that airs weekly, where she dives into the deep mindset that helps her listeners learn to embody a life fully lived. As a trained hypnotherapist and Kundalini instructor, Mary brings a level of consciousness and soul-focused inner work to everything that she does. This is so awesome. We have not had anybody with a yoga background on the show, and I have done Kundalini yoga and other forms of yoga. It is so empowering, so healing. It's a great way to get into your body, and so I'm just really excited about this episode.
Yay, good. Yeah, it is. It was honestly a huge piece to my recovery through trauma, was just getting back into my body, and that's been a massive, massive piece to the entire journey of just becoming embodied. And Kundalini was just such a gift, still is. I still practice, still teach today. So yeah, I love it. We can get all into that if we want to.
Okay, great. I love it. And so that was kind of like just reading your bio, but I know that you have so many other things that you're into, and just kind of the way you show up in the world as someone who really cares about the full person. And I think we're going to get into the topic of embodiment a little bit later, but just how if we're not embodied with our body, mind, and spirit, it is so much more difficult to heal from trauma. So give us your background, why are you in this work? What exactly is this work you're doing? Give us the rundown on you.
Yeah, totally. So if we were to kind of rewind the clock, I don't know, let's say 8-9 years ago, you would have seen and experienced a very different person than I am today. So at that time, kind of at that moment of total utter crisis, I was about 80 pounds heavier than I am now. I was dealing with massive anxiety and depression. I mean, panic attacks, totally debilitating, couldn't get out of bed, was in a lot of physical pain. I had autoimmune issues that were going on.
I've got those too.
It can be so frustrating. And I was really at war with my body. Like
Mm,
everything that my body was experiencing at that time, I felt like it was my enemy, whether it
yeah.
was the way that it looked, the way that it felt, the pain that I was
Hmm.
processing.
Yeah.
And was just honestly like completely checked out of life, like numbed
Mm,
out.
right.
I just had to leave my body ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what happened is that, and I can't remember who kind of coined this idea that like oftentimes in our journeys, what is our trauma, what is our challenge in life can become, and oftentimes does become, our medicine to the world.
Mm,
And so when I look
yes.
back on that time, it's like I think about, even though that was really hard and really challenging, I love that version of myself because she was the one who was in
Mm,
so much pain, who was protecting
yeah.
very powerfully from trauma in her life,
Yeah.
that ultimately led me to the place where I said, okay, I have to believe that there is more to life than this. Like I was
Mm,
suicidal. I
yeah.
mean, I was
Yeah.
in all kinds of therapy, all the things. So there was this moment where I chose to ultimately fight for my life.
Yeah.
And through a series of all kinds of little and huge decisions,
Mm,
reading books, going to seminars, working with a coach, I became a Kundalini yoga instructor at my heaviest weight when I was in a very plus size body, and slowly but surely started to come back home to my body. And
mm,
eventually, through a lot of healing, through a lot of deep, deep work,
yeah.
became
Yeah.
a coach, became someone who now guides people along that same journey who've really disconnected from themselves, who
Mm,
are in this season of life of burnout, exhaustion, overachieving, trying to earn approval and
yes.
love, to I am lovable. I am
Yeah.
already, without doing anything else, lovable,
Yes.
and connecting with their body, their femininity, um, everything that makes them whole already, and just sort of inviting them back home to that
Mhm.
reality that they're already whole. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the journey in a nutshell.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
There's so many things I love about what you said, but the thing that stood out to me the most was that you look back at your past self with love. And I think what can happen for so many of us who've experienced trauma is that we look at earlier versions of ourselves, whether we were in the midst of trauma or whether we were coming out of it and then experiencing like the PTSD, the depression, all those things. It can be a really looking at it shamefully. And even when we kind of move a little bit further, we can be proud of where we've got to, but then still feel like we want to distance ourselves from the trauma of the past and how we were coping back then. So maybe could you talk to me a little bit more about kind of loving your past
Yeah.
self, even as there were things in your life that you ultimately didn't like and wanted to change? Like, how do you look
Yeah.
back with compassion for your past self?
I'm actually really glad we're talking about this. I love this topic because when I think about my past self, and for any of us, as we look back at
Mm,
old versions of ourselves, I mean, I really believe we're all evolving all
yeah.
the time. We're in so many reiterations of who we've been
Mm-hmm.
already, and we'll continue this evolution. But it's like, we only have the set of skills that we have to
Right.
manage what's happening at the time that all of that's happening to us. Even now,
Yes.
like you think about like what's happening is a global trauma,
Mm-hmm.
even as we speak. And it's like each of us are at a different point of our journey and have
Mm-hmm.
a certain set of skills,
Yeah.
specific tools in our toolbox that we can bring forward. And I know that for
Mm-hmm.
me, when all this was going on and I was kind of coming out of the trauma and sort of into
Right.
this aftermath of trauma for myself, it was like I was in my early 20s
Mm-hmm.
and I did not have a lot of experience of life. I honestly didn't have a lot of skills. I had never experienced the trauma that I had been
Mm,
through.
sure.
And so for me, it's like, and I would imagine most of us can relate to this, that it's like, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's so in that primitive part of your brain, that lizard part of
Mm-hmm.
your brain where
Yeah.
it's fight, flight, or freeze. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing the best that we can to manage what's coming at us. And so to me, when I look back at that woman who I was and how she had to cope, how
Mm,
she like for me it was food. I found that food was a honest to God beautiful tool at the
yeah.
time
Yeah.
because it's what I had. right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I didn't know how to process emotions. I didn't know how to work through the cognitive process to
Right.
create new thoughts, to create new beliefs, to work myself through to the other side, like I had the skills to do now.
Yeah.
At that time, I didn't know that, but I knew that when I ate, it dulled the
Mm-hmm.
pain.
Right.
It
Right.
quieted the voices.
Mhm.
It gave me that temporary relief,
Right.
right?
And I think there's actual chemical changes in our brain
Yeah.
when we eat. And so
Yep.
like it does work, and it's a good coping skill for a lot of people
Yeah.
when they have a limited toolkit. Yeah.
Exactly. So I can't hate that version of myself because I look at her and I go, wow, you were really resourceful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's this
Uh-huh.
like sweet compassion that I have to her,
Yeah.
that like she really found whatever she could to manage and to cope. Now, would I say that now I have healthier ways of doing that? Absolutely.
Sure.
But then it's like, man, she figured out how to get through that time without
Mm,
going to the extreme of committing suicide, right? Like
right.
there is, and that was an option, obviously. And so it was like,
Right.
okay, so then what's the other option? And for me at
Mm-hmm.
that time, it was, and honestly, it was a lot of drinking. It was a lot
Mm-hmm.
of just totally numbing out, checking out,
Yeah.
distracting
Yeah.
myself in any way that I could because I wanted to disassociate from the pain that I was feeling. And so even though I might look back and go, you know what, those are maybe more dysfunctional ways of doing it, it got me to where I am. And so I just have to
Right.
have so much grace and
Yes.
compassion,
Yes.
because if I'm sitting there hating her,
Uh-huh.
it's like, if you think about part of our journey through recovery is we're going to have to go back to that season and time in our lives
Mm-hmm.
and talk to that version of ourselves often,
Mm.
because our brain gets frozen
Yeah.
in that time. And so like there are so many times where I have to go talk to that Mary who was scared, that
Yeah. Yeah.
Mary who was terrified, that Mary who didn't know what to do. I've got to mentally go back and speak
Mm-hmm.
to her, and I can't hate her. I've got to go back and go, I
Right.
love you so much, sweet
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Like you're okay. You were
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's important to love those versions of ourselves, because we are going to have
Yes.
to continue to work with her or him, you know, in
Yeah.
a past way for sure.
No, that's so beautiful. And I know for myself, coming from a cult-like background,
Yeah.
one of the things that I did to survive was I had this gift of leadership and wanting to speak and wanting to be heard and seen. But there weren't really acceptable ways to do that in this very patriarchal environment. I
Yeah.
couldn't, preach. I couldn't, have a career where I was, speaking to a lot of people. So what I did was I wrote a blog, and the topic of the blog was about adherence to the patriarchy. And,
Totally.
I look back at that blog, and thankfully it's pretty much scrubbed from the internet
Yeah.
because there's a lot of messed up stuff.
Yeah.
But I felt a lot of shame about that for many years. And
Mm.
whenever anybody has told me, like, yeah, I used to follow your old website and you've changed, I'm like, I am so sorry. And there
Yeah.
used to be a lot of shame I would carry. But as I've grown and healed, I've realized that was the version of Ashley that was trying to stretch, trying to use gifts,
Yeah.
trying to grow even in the confines of this patriarchal environment. And so I can't be angry at my younger self, because
Right.
I think it's like Maya Angelou. She says, once you know better, you do better, or you have the opportunity
Yep.
to do better. Once I got that opportunity to do better, I did. But in that phase, I didn't know I could do
Yeah.
better. And so, you speaking about compassion to past selves, that's so beautiful.
Mm.
But I'd like to focus in on what were some of the tools that you used to really process your emotions and feelings? Because before you were using different behaviors such as eating and alcohol.
Yeah.
And again, at that time, those are the tools you had. But how have you been able to process your emotions and feelings in, a healthier way? What are some of those
Yeah.
tools that you've learned?
Yeah, so I think one of the most powerful tools, and this is really helpful for anyone who's dealing with the PTSD, especially panic, especially
Yes.
anxiety
Yes.
and hypersensitivity,
Mm-hmm.
which is to get back into our bodies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is, I mean, and we know, we've seen books like the Body Keeps the Score
Yeah.
and books like that that talk about with veterans and PTSD, the importance of getting
Yes.
back in the body. But I didn't know the science of any of that, right? This was like a total intuitive thing that I did when I
Yes.
moved towards yoga, because I think what happens in trauma, I think we have to understand, is that we leave the body.
Mm.
And we leave the body in a bunch of different types of ways.
Mm.
And so part of this journey of recovery is getting back into our physical bodies.
Mm.
And especially when we have experienced physical trauma of
Yes.
some kind, this is even more important and
Mm.
can take longer and can be more challenging, but
Sure.
it's like so vital that we begin to experience our bodies as home.
Mm.
And so for me, there's a lot of different ways to do that. For me, it was the path of yoga
Yeah.
and breath work. But
Mhm.
one of the things that we can do, so when we're in trauma and we know that because of the way that our brains work and we go into that back part of the brain,
Mhm.
which is our lizard brain, our reptilian brain that's
Yeah.
completely reactive, we check out of the body.
Yeah.
So we leave, right? We disassociate from the body. So
Mhm.
to come back to the body for me, it was like I had to inhabit this
Mm.
body and learn how to befriend her, learn how to see
Yes.
her as my ally and
Mm.
not my enemy.
Right.
Now,
Oh, yes.
that takes a lot of that's some cognitive work on
Right.
that kind of front, but from a real like, okay, what does it look like to get in my body? One of
Mhm.
the things that I teach my one-on-one coaching clients, but also had to learn first myself, was this idea of grounding.
Mm.
This idea of what my therapist at the time would say, to find your feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that idea because for me, like my anxiety, I mean, was so intense that I don't even know, there's probably a word for it, but I
Mm.
had a really hard time leaving my home and
Right.
getting out and
Right.
like going to a
Mhm.
grocery store, or it was just like, I mean, it
Yeah.
was so debilitating. So
Mhm.
for me, I had to practice this out in public a lot. But for me, it was like, where are my feet?
Yeah.
Which is what's real. If I
Mhm.
look around, because my brain's going a million miles an hour,
Mhm.
what's real? Okay, I'm here. My feet are on this grass or on this floor. And
Right.
each of us right now can even do this as we're sitting here listening to this
Uh-huh.
conversation. It's like, okay, I'm sitting. How does my body feel as I'm sitting in my chair or sitting in my car listening or in my
Mm.
living room? What does the energy around me feel like?
Yeah.
And so much of this is the slowing down and inviting ourselves into our body. And we can do
Mhm.
that through our sensations. So what am I seeing? What can I touch, tactile? What
Yeah.
can I
Yeah.
feel? What am I tasting? What am I smelling?
Mhm.
And so when we can invite in our senses, it brings us back to the present moment.
Right.
And the PTSD, as we know, is that replay of the past.
Yeah.
Anxiety oftentimes can be from the past or an anticipation of the future.
Uh-huh.
So this idea of getting in our bodies, it's physical. It's what gravitates us and grounds us into this present moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Kundalini yoga is great for this. Honestly, any kind of yoga is great for this, of bringing us back into our body. Breathing is really powerful for
Mm.
this. But even exercises, like I did a lot of getting in nature, like a
Mm.
lot of going on hikes, especially when I was in this place where it was really hard for my body to move
Right.
because of my weight, and it was really painful. It was like, let
Mhm.
me just gently walk, but I want to be in nature. I want to see the
Yes.
trees. I want to feel, if possible, my bare feet on the ground, like
Mhm.
literal grounding and figuratively
Yes.
grounding,
Yes.
like get in the earth as much as possible. But that was an incredibly powerful tool for me to get into my body, to really embody from a loving place all of what it means to be human in this time and
Mm.
space.
Wow. Wow. See, I think that's so interesting. I think a common misconception people have with yoga is that it's kind of taking you out of the body and that you are kind of going off into some esoteric space. And I think it can
Yeah,
be that. And there are practices like that, and that can be fun and enlightening and all those things.
yeah,
But I really love how your use of yoga is to connect like your body, mind, and spirit. And there's
yeah,
this idea of embodiment. And I wondered if you could talk to us about that, because I've been hearing the term embodiment. It's just like a buzzword. Like every
Yes.
social media post is about embodiment on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck does it really mean? And why is that important for people who've experienced trauma?
Yeah. So I'll kind of explain it in this way. Embodiment to me is number one. I mean, there's a couple of different ways we can look at it. If we look at it from a physical definition, it's really what I was just talking about, being in your physical body, embodied. When you think about being disembodied, it's like you're in that realm of the cognitive mind. You're kind of like mentally masturbating everything that's going on. That's causing this looping of like fear, or looping of anxiety, or looping of depression. You know, we get caught up in the mind. So embodiment means I'm in my body. Like I can feel that I'm here, that I'm breathing. That's why meditation's so powerful, especially meditation that incorporates the breath work. Because if I'm going to be embodied, I want to feel like as I'm breathing, and you guys can do this right now, just begin to notice your inhale. And as you inhale, the belly rises. And as you exhale, the belly button pulls into the spine. So our body is already effortlessly breathing. It's pressing the lungs out in the exhale, expanding the lungs on the inhale.
Yeah.
And just by bringing awareness to that, I'm becoming more embodied.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just by like upping the level of observation that I am a human having a human physical experience right now. And I can tell that first by my breathing. So just that cadence. I can tell it by the fact that my heart is beating. And these are all really, really simple things, but it's unbelievably powerful if you experience trauma, again, to invite ourselves back into the body. And I think this is really important, is to feel safe in our body.
Yes.
Right? Because a lot of trauma survivors don't feel safe in their body. So this is a journey of dealing with all the sensations that arise inside of the body.
Right.
When we think about emotions and the vibration that emotions have in our body, it's learning to get comfortable with that and learning to make some peace with those vibrations in the body. So that's kind of the first way of looking at embodiment, is like being in our physical body. The other is from a more cognitive, kind of psychological way of understanding embodiment. And to me, a word that I would use is almost a little bit like a synonym. Hard to say that one. Is alignment.
Yeah.
To me, when I'm embodied, it means that I'm connected on all levels. I'm in this kind of state of alignment where I'm connected to my higher self. I'm connected to source, to God, universe, higher power, whatever that looks like for you.
Right.
And then I'm embodied. I'm like in this state of total alignment where my words match my actions.
Right.
Who I am, you can tell by my external. It's like the internal and the external match.
Right. Yes.
So I'm fully embodied. Whereas we all kind of have met people probably who aren't embodied, and they're a little bit like scattered. They're a little bit all over the place. They say one thing, they do another. They're a little bit hard to pin down, kind of that air energy.
Yeah.
And so to me, embodied, it's like, oh, I am here and I'm like checked in and clicked in to higher self, higher source. And I'm embodied. The internal matches the external.
Right. So like your body, mind, and spirit, all of those are working in tangent. They're all lined up. And because I can think of examples, there are people who, they're very much into their subconscious mind. Everything's just kind of on autopilot, and they're just not aware of anybody around them. And sometimes that can be perceived as selfish, but sometimes it's just, they're just kind of in their head. And then there are people who are just all about like so logic driven, and they're not kind of thinking about more larger abstract concepts. It's just, very direct and logic driven. And then others who it's almost like their body kind of overtakes them, and they're really just responding to instinctual urges, not using their logical mind and their subconscious. And so I love how all these working interchangeably together just creates this embodiment. I really like how you describe that.
Yeah.
Um, so you've talked about grounding. Are there other ways to kind of bring yourself into that state of alignment?
Yeah. So I think it's important that, to me, first of all, we have to make peace with the fact
Mm.
that we are emotional beings.
Yeah, yeah.
And part of this alignment is the ability to feel what we're feeling in the moment
Right.
and process through that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, it's one thing to be in the body and we can use that to help us process through emotions. But another part of alignment is like, I'm so dialed into my feelings that I know what I'm feeling. I
Mm-hmm.
know how this person makes me feel. And I'm
Yes.
going, this is not a safe person.
Yeah,
Abort,
yeah.
get out of the
Yes,
situation.
yes.
Or this is a safe person. Let me move towards them.
Mm-hmm.
I know kind of what my internal yes is. I know what my internal no is. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked with that. I've cultivated new feelings
Mm-hmm.
in my life. So oftentimes we've talked a little bit about this, where you get frozen in time.
Yeah, yeah.
And we end up having like this limited vocabulary for our emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and we get stuck in that looping, we get stuck in that fear, we get stuck in that anxiety. And so
Right.
part of being in alignment is where there's like this free flowing energy through our bodies, where we have access to all the range of emotions,
Yes.
where we don't go, okay, these are good and these are bad,
Right, right.
but we can go, okay, actually, what am I feeling? So to me, I think part of this being in alignment is learning how to process our emotions, because what keeps us stuck, what
Mm-hmm.
keeps us in a place of kind of the PTSD loop
Yeah.
is not knowing how to process through emotions, and we become
Mm.
a victim of our emotional experience
Right.
versus having the skill set to say, I feel confident
Uh-huh.
that no matter what is thrown at me or whatever I'm feeling in the moment, I have the skill set to know how to process and move through to the other side. And so
Right.
to me, part of this alignment is being an open channel for those
Mm.
emotions, because we're confident we can process through them. And we can talk about kind of some specific ways of doing that if that's helpful. But I think that's sort of the context to start with.
Yeah, so I want to get into those specific ways to kind of process through them, but maybe we can camp out a little bit on, why do you think people have such a limited perspective of what emotions they can feel?
Yeah.
Does it have to do with, the gender roles that have been placed
Mhm.
on people? Does it have to do with, society's expectation and just not communicating that there's a
Mhm.
vast array of emotions? Like, why do people have such a hard time naming what they're feeling, and just why do we often group it into such small like four or five feelings?
Yeah. Well, I would say like yes to all of those examples. It's a combination of everything.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Like, number one, I think it's our messaging that we get when we're
Hmm.
younger. And this is true for men and for women, for little girls and
Yeah.
little boys. So a little bit of subtlety in the different ways that that's
Hmm.
communicated. Like, so for traditional for people who identify as female and who kind of grow up in a family where some of those attributes of a female of being emotional
Yeah.
are shamed. So don't be too emotional, don't be hysterical. There's a lot of
Hmm.
can be a lot of period shaming, PMS
Right.
shaming, right? So those kinds of stereotypical ways of going, oh, you're just being too intense, you're being too
Yeah.
moody, you're being too there are all kinds of slang words we could go about that.
Hmm.
So there's that. And then for little boys, oftentimes it's man up,
Right.
right?
Right.
Get it together.
Yeah.
Don't feel, be strong. And we really encourage for boys to be disconnected from their emotions.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of the first way we get introduced is
Hmm.
how you're feeling isn't okay. It's
Right.
either to be quiet, to
Hmm.
go handle it yourself.
Hmm.
Um, like go in the room. There's no
Hmm.
tolerance oftentimes for
Right.
normal child emotions, which are, temper tantrums,
Yeah. Yeah.
not having the skills to filter, and that is punished.
Right.
So that is, going time out. I don't know about how you were
Hmm.
raised, but it was spankings for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
Um, and so there's a lot of discouragement around feel your feelings. I do think I will just kind of say this as a caveat, that's getting better. There's
Yeah. I
there's
think you're
there's
right.
you know, like I think, at least I don't have children, so I can't speak to this personally, but in the people that I know that have children, my family, and there's more space to feel
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
feeling. But our generation, certainly our parents' generation, there was no
Right.
space for that.
Yeah.
It's like, no
Yeah.
thanks. And then you go into this kind of, what I would say is a appreciation of the mind, not an
Mm-hmm.
appreciation for the human experience. So we
Mm.
have glorified the intellect,
Right.
the cognitive process, the mind.
Yeah.
And so we simply, as humans, as modern adults, have not been taught about emotions unless you
Mm.
happened to have a progressive parent or you were
Right.
in therapy at a really early age. You
Right.
know, this is not something we're teaching children in school,
No.
how to feel
No.
your feelings. Like, you know, I mean, I think that there was, maybe you had the sad face and the happy face,
Right. Yeah.
but that was it.
That's very limiting.
So limiting, so limiting. So I think that I think that's part of it. And then I think that because of that, we often too have this idea that there are good emotions and bad emotions,
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah.
healthy emotions and not healthy emotions. So there's almost this fear around the quote unquote bad or negative emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't feel those, don't feel anger, don't feel
Right.
sadness, don't
Mm-hmm.
feel lonely. Like you're weak if you feel those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even in the self-help world, a lot of times there's this glorification of positive thinking, positive
Right.
emotion.
Right.
Um,
Toxic positivity.
Totally, 100%. So it's like we're not taught that all emotions are equal.
Right.
And the other piece of this, which I find really, really interesting, is that in the realm of psychiatry,
Mm-hmm.
there is a misbelief that health equals emotions that are numb. So, like, I was
Ooh.
taught, and we were taught that give a pill if you're feeling something too intense.
Mm.
So, in order to be emotionally healthy, we actually need to be flatlined. That's the
Right.
misbelief.
Right.
So if I'm feeling a peak that's too high or a low that's too low, all of a sudden I have a diagnosis and I'm
Right.
not healthy. So
Right.
what we think is balance or emotional maturity is bringing our emotions here where we don't
Right.
really feel anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think we just have a fundamental misunderstanding of what it looks like to be a healthy, emotional, mature
Sure.
human, which is experiencing a range of emotions.
Right.
And
Right.
I'll just point on one last thing and then we can we can move
Yeah.
on,
Yeah. This is so good.
is that oftentimes what we think an emotion is the emotion after it's been suppressed.
Hmm.
So, for example, anger is a great example of
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah.
it's like we think that, let's imagine for just a second, the anger is a beach ball.
Right.
And we put the beach ball down into the water and we say, I'm not
Okay.
allowed to feel anger. And I'm going to
Yeah.
press it down. I'm going
Yeah.
to press it down. I'm going to push it down. And what happens? Eventually it pops up
Mm-hmm.
and hits us in the face. There's an explosion of
Right.
some kind. And then we go, that's anger.
Right. Right.
And so oftentimes when we suppress emotions so often and so deeply, when they come out, it's
Yes.
the extreme version, it's the suppressed version coming
Right.
out. And that's actually not the emotion. Like when you felt
Mm.
anger to begin with before you suppressed it, it's really, anger's not that intense.
Right. Right. It's true.
But we have a fear around anger because when we think of anger, we think of the explosion of anger, not
Right.
anger
Right.
itself.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, again, a misunderstanding of what the emotion is in the
Mm.
first place. So
Yeah.
you wrap all of that together in a big dysfunctional package. We're not
Yeah.
going to want to feel or don't have the language or the skill set to even communicate what we're
Yes.
feeling. So we take medication, and
Mhm.
sometimes we need it. I'm not saying that
Sure.
that's
Sure.
always evil or anything like
Yeah.
that, but it's like we're over prescribing, we really
Mhm.
are. And we're doing our best to not feel. That's what we think the answer is.
That's so good. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so important. And before we kind of move on to maybe some like techniques to like move through emotion, I
Yeah.
do want to make like a caveat, which I'm sure you're thinking in your mind too, but different people have different personalities. So, like when I am experiencing my full range emotions, it's kind of like, whoo, up and down, around the scale. When my
Yeah.
husband is experiencing the full range of emotion, from a distance, it might look flatline, but he's actually, moving. He's just maybe not
Yeah.
not quite as high. So different people are going to have different levels of what's natural way to express their emotion. But I
100%.
think the thing you're getting at is like when it is flatline, when there's no movement,
Yeah.
when it's just like numbed out, that's where the problem is. And so
Yeah.
how can we kind of avoid either going to extremes that are unhealthy or just like numbing out completely? Like, what can we do to feel those emotions and like work through them, like feel
Yeah.
through them?
Yeah. I think this is really important because I love that you kind of brought to our awareness of these extremes. Like one is what I like to call that self-rumination,
Yeah.
where we get stuck in our emotions. And then the other again is just like totally not feeling it at all. So
Yeah.
to me there's a beautiful middle ground. And to
Mm.
me that looks like being able to feel and process through our emotions and get to the other side of our emotions.
Yes.
So I want to I'll kind of go through an acronym because I love like
Perfect. Yes.
for my brain to hold on to, you know? So the acronym that I use for processing emotions is called BACK,
Okay.
BACK. And this is basically, okay, 4 steps to process your emotions and come back to your body, come back to the
Mm.
present, right? So it's the invitation to come back.
Yes.
The first, the B stands for breathe. And this
Mm.
is where we notice we're feeling something. This is where it's all about awareness and
Mm-hmm.
observation. I am
Yes.
having an emotional response
Yep.
right now. And each of you just take a moment as we're listening, like pause and just kind of notice like I'm feeling something. At any given moment, we're having an emotional response to life. Admit, "Oh, I'm feeling something." So we're
Right.
breathing and we're kind of going, let me pause. This is
Mm-hmm.
that moment of pause of what am I feeling?
Yeah.
What am I feeling? For me, I anchor, I put my hand on my chest, I take
That's
a
good.
breath. What am I feeling right now? And it's usually what's below the surface. Okay. So
Right.
we're acknowledging I'm
Right.
feeling something. So that's the first step is to breathe and to have that moment of, hey, I'm feeling something. Okay.
Yeah.
The second step to processing our emotions for the A is to allow. This is really important. So, this is where we give ourselves permission to be in the discomfort and allow
Right.
ourselves to be feeling what we're feeling without doing the beach ball stuffing,
Right.
without
Exactly.
saying, this is bad. I can't feel this. We allow, we open, we kind of are in this posture of
Mm-hmm.
opening and we create space to experience what is.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that in this stage, we can acknowledge our desire to bolt.
Yeah.
Like, I want to shut down. I do not want
Right.
to feel this. I want to
Mm-hmm.
run. I want to use my old coping strategies to
Mm-hmm.
numb, to disassociate.
Yeah.
And this is where we go, okay, I'm aware of that. And I'm choosing to allow myself the space I need to feel what I'm feeling, knowing I can repeat to myself, I am safe.
Mm.
This will pass.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be stuck in this forever. I am not the
Mm.
emotion. This is just a
Ooh,
vibration.
yes, yes.
I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, say that again. Say that again.
I am not the emotion. This is just a vibration.
Ooh, powerful.
So powerful because then it gives a little space, right? It's like takes us from I am like this state of panic
Yeah,
to I'm
yeah.
having an anxious response.
Right.
Right. This is a sensation in my body.
Mhm.
And so we've taken that pause, we're breathing, we're
Mhm.
allowing. And then the third step is the C, and this is where we connect.
Ooh, yeah,
And
yeah.
this is where we connect with the body. So this is where we get into the
Mm.
body sensations piece and ground. So this is where we go,
Mm.
okay, where am I feeling this in the body?
Yeah.
So am I feeling this in my heart, in my belly, in
Mhm.
my shoulders? Does it feel tight? Does it
Yeah.
feel heavy? Does it feel like nausea? Does it feel like my
Mhm.
throat is constricted? Does it feel like an
Right.
elephant's on my chest? Like what
Yeah.
does it actually feel like in my body? Connect with
Mhm.
the physical sensations of what's going on.
Yes.
And also, I think what's important in this stage too is to connect to the the thought process of how we got there in the first place.
Right.
It's like, okay, what was I thinking that caused this
Hmm.
emotion? We kind of get a little bit curious and connect
Yeah.
to that part of ourselves. It's going, oh, okay, here's what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
This was a trigger. This showed up for me. Now I'm in
Yeah.
this state. And this is where we take a moment to ask ourselves what we need. So we're connecting to that part of ourselves that says, what do I need? Do I need to call a friend?
Hmm.
Do I need to do some yoga? Do I need
Mm-hmm.
to do our breathing? Like, this is kind of
Right.
that chance to connect to, where are my tools and what tool do I need
Mm.
right now?
Right, right.
What
Something
is it that
that
I need?
stood out to me there, would you say that the reason we feel emotions is because, like, a direct cause of what we're thinking? Would you say that
Yes.
that's how emotions happen?
100%. Yeah. And we're responding to, not only is it the thought that we're thinking. So all
Mm.
thoughts, let me back up. All thoughts generate emotion.
Yeah,
Always.
yeah.
So if I'm thinking, like, for example, even doing this interview, if I'm thinking this is really intense, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing a really good job, or I probably sound really stupid, those are all thoughts. Those are all
Sure,
sentences.
sure.
Each of those will generate an emotion. I
Yeah,
could start
yeah.
to become more nervous, to feel more
Mm-hmm.
stressed, to feel shamed, um,
Mm-hmm.
to feel embarrassed, whatever it might be. Or if I just think, man, I'm killing this
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
that's a different thought. That's going to generate confidence, right? So each
Absolutely.
of our thoughts generate emotions, and also we respond to sensations in our body.
Mm.
So the trigger might not even be a thought. The trigger could be an old association
Right,
of
right.
a memory of an
Mm-hmm.
old thought that's presenting itself in the body. It's like, I don't know
Right.
about y'all, but when I get around the anniversary of my trauma,
Mm-hmm.
my body knows before my mind
Yeah.
does. Like I feel it in my body, and I'm like, why am I so off right now? And I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, my body is remembering.
Right, exactly.
So we're kind of having a couple different responses when we're having
Mm-hmm.
emotions. One, to our thoughts, and then two, to
Yeah.
physical sensations in our body.
Right, right. And so that connecting time is like realizing all of those thoughts and those
Yes.
sensations and the things coming from the past, and then like, what do I need right
Yeah.
now to support myself? That's so beautiful. Yeah, yeah. I'm
Totally.
loving this. So B
Yeah.
A C.
And then the last step is a K, and this is a very feminine way of saying this. So for all the men, just hang with me, okay? Which is kiss.
Ooh.
And this comes from my mom, and I'm sure there are other mothers that did this, but like, anytime somebody got hurt in our family, I have 4 sisters, or we had like a little doll and we were pretending, it was always like,
Mm-hmm.
if she got a little boo-boo or a
Yeah,
cut, it'd be
yeah.
like, kiss it, kiss it, kiss it. And it was all about
Mm-hmm.
basically like, let me kiss this open wound. Let
Mm.
me bring in this level of tenderness
Ah,
to
yeah,
the
yeah.
equation. And this is where we almost like call in our highest, most nurturing,
Mm.
loving self into the equation, our most compassionate
Yeah,
self.
yeah.
It basically speaks truth to ourselves, as though we were reparenting a child.
Mm.
And so,
Wow.
and the child being ourselves. And so
Yes.
for me, a lot of the work that I do with my clients is about this inner child work,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
going back to these moments where we received messages, where we were either in direct trauma, or we were
Mm-hmm.
receiving rejection, fear of abandonment, all this kind of stuff. And we go and we go, I've got you now.
Hmm.
You're okay. Like, baby, I love you. I see you. I hear you, and you matter.
Yeah.
You are okay. I'm right here with
Mm.
you.
Yes.
And so when we're processing our emotions, we need to kiss it. Like, we
Yeah.
need to bring in and practice this compassionate self-talk, so that we don't
Mm.
say, hurry up and get through this, suck it up,
Right.
man up, kind of get to the next stage where we again create this space where we go, it's okay, we got this.
Mm.
And we bring that energy of kiss it into
Yeah.
the equation. And to me, all any emotion wants is to be met with tenderness,
Right.
like, hands down. Like,
Yes. Yes.
any emotion that we're feeling wants to go, it's okay that I'm feeling this, it's safe that I'm feeling this.
Right.
And when we can sort of relax and allow
Mm-hmm.
it allow the emotion to just be there, without
Mm-hmm.
judgment, without trying to hurry up and fix it.
Yeah.
But if we can just like be in it and feel it, we can acknowledge it, we can breathe into it, we can
Mm-hmm.
allow it, we can connect with it, and then we can kiss it.
Hmm.
Then what we realize is that a typical time of a duration of an emotion is between 6 and 90 seconds long.
Really?
Yes. Like, it's
Wow.
not long. what keeps us in this looping of feeling constant anxiety, constant depression is that we never move through it. We never give our space time to feel it. We just start thinking about the emotion, and the thinking of it, again,
which
that
causes
kind of
more
mental
feeling.
Goes around and around and around.
Wow.
So when we pause to come back, that, I mean, it's like, once you learn that skill, it's like, oh, I don't have to be afraid of my emotions, because I can process through it. I can get to the other side and move through it.
Yes. And so that brings me to one of my last questions.
Yeah.
This is just so powerful, but I feel like if we don't take these steps, if we don't do BACK, then we really are we're probably going to experience more pain from our emotions for a longer amount of time. What are some other things that can come up if we don't process through our emotions? Like, why is it so important to do that? Because what's the alternative if we don't?
Yeah. So I think what is important to understand is that when we don't process through emotions, they end up running the show. Ooh. It's like they hijack and they become the driver of the bus.
Yeah.
And I promise you, you do not want that to happen.
No.
Because they weren't meant to drive the bus. Like they don't have hands, they don't have feet, right? So it's like, you don't want this to happen. You're going to crash. And what's fascinating is when they stay in the level of the unconscious, the subconscious mind, that's what runs the programming in our lives. So for example, if I have the foot down on fear and I never let myself process through fear, fear is going to be calling the shots in my life. It's going to be making the decisions in my life. It's going to be the loudest voice in my life. And so all of a sudden, when I look at my life, I have a life that I've constructed and I've built out of a reaction to the fear I wasn't willing to feel. And to me, that is prison. It's like we become imprisoned by these unprocessed emotions. Or it could be like, let's say I have a fear of abandonment and I'm not aware of it. I'm not feeling it. Then think about what kinds of decisions I would make out of a fear of abandonment versus feeling this, moving through that and feeling an energy and an emotion of confidence, of self-love, of self-acceptance, of worthiness, of lovability. Based on how I'm feeling, my dominant emotions are going to drive my actions. So if we are not aware, they're just running on old programming, causing us to move from usually lower vibrational emotions versus once I've processed through and I can have more power on choosing the emotions I want to feel, then it's like, I like my actions that come from a place of confidence, of worthiness, of enoughness, of self-acceptance, of joy, of gratitude. Like, again, I'm going to feel it all, but it's like, if I'm not conscious and not processing those emotions that are not ultimately going to give me what I want, they end up calling the shots, and that isn't freedom. So that to me is the biggest consequence, not to mention the fact that we cannot push that beach ball down forever. And they do come out sideways, and it's a lot more painful when they do than dealing with it in real time. It's that's when it gets real dysfunctional. It comes out as addiction. And as we know, I mean, trauma survivors, one of the main ways when we don't process emotions, it comes out through addiction. So addiction, further abusing, becoming the abuser, causing more pain, right? So it's like it comes out sideways eventually when we're not processing it. So to me, it's like emotionally processing overall equals freedom.
Yes. That is really, really powerful. And I want to get right back to this interview. But before we keep on going, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to have a little message here.
So there's choices that you have the opportunity to make. You can either stay with your abuser or you can leave. And make no mistake about it, it's going to be hard either way you go. But I can tell you one thing for sure. If you do decide to make that courageous decision to go, there's hope. So much hope.
everyone, and welcome back to the Courage 365 show. I'm Ashley Easter, and I'm interviewing Mary Hyatt, and we have been talking all about feeling our emotions and feeling our feelings and how to work through those so we can live empowered lives even after trauma. Thank you so much for all the wisdom you've already shared with us. I would like to ask for another piece of wisdom for you, and that is, out of all the amazing things that you have learned, like you've done hypnotherapy, it sounds like you've done traditional talk therapy, you've done Kundalini yoga, all the things, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received? Like something that was like a turning point in your life that really kind of shapes how you do things now. Could you share that with us?
Yes. So for me, it is really like a new belief that was instilled to me that ended up shifting so much in my life.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that I do not have to earn my lovability. And I cannot lose my love, and my lovability, and I cannot earn it. And one of my teachers and mentors is a man named Robert Holden, and he wrote this book called Lovability. And I recommend it to every single one of my one-on-one coaching clients. It's something that I work a lot with. He is absolutely brilliant, but it's this idea of we are not broken. We are so lovable already as is. And honestly, like that advice of keep coming back to your enoughness, to your lovability. It's about remembering who we are before we had this belief that we were broken. So that was like a game changer. It's a concept and a belief that I continue to have to retrain my mind towards. And it's just one of those like, okay, this has to be the guiding philosophy and principle of my entire life, is that I am lovable just because I breathe. Like my existence, the fact that I'm here means I'm lovable. I don't have to earn it, and I cannot lose it.
Wow. I'm lovable just because I breathe. Like everybody, like if you have a piece of paper around you, like write that down, jot it in a note in your phone. I'm lovable just because I breathe. That is so wonderful, and it really ties back into what you said in the first part of the show about the first thing when you're feeling these emotions and traumas coming up is to ground yourself and to breathe. And when you breathe, remember, because you're breathing, you're lovable. And I love that so much. Tell everybody where they can find you. Like, tell us about your social media. It sounds like you do coaching work. I think you might even have a free gift for people. Is that right?
I do. I feel like Oprah, like, and you get a card. You get a card.
Yes. But it's probably not a car for everyone, right?
Sorry, guys. One day we'll get to that point. So y'all can find me at maryhyatt.com. I'm super active on Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn, but Instagram is Mary G. Hyatt, Facebook, Mary Grace Hyatt. All that can be found on my website, maryhyatt.com. Make sure to check out my podcast, the Living Fully Alive podcast, as well. And again, if you just go to the website, all the goodies are there. But I do have this amazing free gift. I think that's really perfect for anyone who has dealt with trauma, PTSD, anxiety, panic disorder, anything like that. And I call it my anxiety recovery kit. And it includes 3 guided meditations from me, including one for panic attacks. I also have in that kit a 6-minute breathing technique that will instantly like lower your cortisol level, bring you to that state of calm. And then there's also a PDF guide in there for my favorite essential oil blends for anxiety. And you can grab that at maryhyatt.com/recovery kit. And it's all for free. So you can go take some beautiful steps to love on yourself and panic or anxiety.
That's awesome. And I think we're going to have that link just dropped in the comments, but would you mind saying it one more time just so everybody can go check it out? Because I know people are going to want to get that.
Yeah, totally. So it is maryhyatt.com/recovery kit.
Excellent. Mary, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I learned so much. I know our audience did too. And everybody go and follow Mary. You're going to love, if you love this, you're going to love the rest of her work. And, subscribe to her podcast and all the things. Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Thanks, Ashley.
Absolutely. And everybody, I would encourage you to also go ahead and follow the Courage 365 show on social media. You can go to Courage 365 on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. And I want to give a special call out for you to go over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel, because when we get 100 people, we get our custom URL, and then more people can hear about the show. So make sure that you are liking the pages so you can be updated. You can watch this show in any of those 3 places every week. And if you've liked the page, that'll automatically pop up in your feed. I'd also encourage you to go over to our website, which is courage365.org. And just for coming to our website, we have a free gift for you. That is our ebook, 5 Keys to Living a Life of Courage. This is specifically for people who've experienced trauma and abuse. 5 steps to standing in courage. And also, if you are in some type of a crisis situation, if you know somebody who's experiencing abuse, or if you've experienced in the past and you're really looking for steps towards healing, you can go to courage365.org and then click the Need Help tab, and there we have a list of resources just for you, all kinds of things from hotlines to supportive blogs and websites and different organizations. Thank you all so much for listening, and live with courage this week.